This is a true case of Mark Stewart's story begins in the pulse of early 2000s youth culture, an era powered by metal riffs, glowing screens, and the rising tide of digital entertainment. In many ways, Mark represented the generation growing up between old-school grit and the new age of technology. His world was built from distortion pedals, computer parts, and the digital universes that were just beginning to take shape. His favorite bands included AC/DC and Metallica, and his free time drifted between Mortal Kombat, Tomb Raider, and tinkering with hard drives. It was a childhood defined by curiosity, the hunger to learn, and an easy connection to any machine placed in front of him. According to his mother, Pauline, Mark showed signs of exceptional intelligence from the time he was small. She recalls a young boy who could list off dinosaur names with the precision of a textbook and who taught himself to play guitar long before most kids his age could form proper chords. That independence, that drive to learn on his own, was something that followed him throughout his life. Music wasn't just a hobby for him. It was a second language, one he understood with ease. But Mark never had the chance to experience the entertainment revolution that was approaching. In November 2006, Sony released the PlayStation 3, a milestone in gaming. The following year, Call of Duty 4 would change the gaming world forever. Mark never saw any of it. His life was cut short months before those cultural shifts arrived. On May 19, 2006, his story took a tragic turn that still haunts his family nearly 2 decades later. In the early hours of the morning, 2 men driving to work discovered Mark's body along Old Dixie Highway in Titusville, Florida. He had been shot and left near the roadside, hidden beneath thick bushes that kept him concealed in the darkness. Mark had been riding his bike home from a friend's house after midnight. His mother slept just a few blocks away, unaware that her son was spending the last moments of his life struggling to reach safety. Evidence suggests he crawled toward help, using what little strength remained but never made it far enough. Mark Stewart was only 22 years old. His journey to Florida had been an attempt at a fresh start. Mark grew up in Reading, Pennsylvania, which his mother describes as a place that had grown rough and dangerous over the years. Before turning 11, Mark had already been robbed twice while visiting a convenience store. Those incidents pushed the family to relocate to Florida in search of peace and stability. In Titusville, life initially felt different. Mark discovered new passions, picked up his first guitar, and spent hours learning songs from his favorite band, Lamb of God. For a time, things seemed steady. Yet Mark's life was also shaped by loss. His father, a strict ex-Marine whom Mark deeply respected, died shortly after Mark finished high school. That loss changed him. He began drinking heavily, worrying his mother and straining the household. Around the same time, he faced harassment from an ex-girlfriend at his workplace, a situation that eventually led to him losing his job at the Sun Cruise Casino. Despite the turmoil, Mark trusted his mother enough to confide deeply personal details about the relationship, showing how close they truly were. Even through all of this, Mark pushed himself to find direction. He told his mother he wanted to turn things around. He planned to attend Full Sail University to study graphic design and later earned his seaman's license, moving toward a new career. According to Pauline, he had even quit drinking and was trying to build a better future. Section 1 lays the foundation for understanding who Mark Stewart was: a bright, talented young man navigating loss, rebuilding himself, and searching for stability in a world that shifted faster than he could keep up. His life had direction, hope, and momentum. All of that ended on a dark Florida road in May 2006. The night of May 19, 2006, stands as the central point in the unsolved case of Mark Stewart. It was an ordinary evening in Titusville, Florida, and there was nothing to indicate that anything unusual or dangerous was about to occur. Mark had spent the evening at a friend's house, a routine hangout that reflected his attempts to stay social, stable, and grounded. There were no reports of disputes, no signs of conflict, and no indication that Mark expected trouble. When he left after midnight to ride his bike home, the path seemed straightforward, just a short distance through familiar streets. The route Mark took was quiet and dimly lit, a stretch of Old Dixie Highway bordered by pockets of bushes and shadows. At that hour, the neighborhood was silent and most residents were asleep. What happened between the moment Mark left his friend's home and the moment he was shot remains one of the most troubling aspects of the case. No witnesses came forward who heard an argument, a confrontation, or even gunfire that night. The details remained largely unknown, pieced together only from the condition of the scene where Mark was eventually found. Two men driving to work early that morning discovered his body near the roadside, partially concealed under a cluster of bushes. The darkness of night had hidden him from view, which explains why no resident noticed anything until the first daylight exposed the outline of his body. Investigators later determined that Mark had been shot and that he likely attempted to crawl toward help. The position of his body suggested movement after the shooting. Evidence indicated he survived for a brief time after being injured, trying to reach safety that never arrived. Mark's mother, Pauline, was asleep only a few blocks away, unaware of the violence unfolding outside. There is no evidence that Mark attempted to call anyone, and no immediate trail of witnesses to fill in the timeline. The lack of surveillance cameras in 2006, particularly in quieter residential areas, created an immediate gap in the investigation. Without video footage or eyewitness accounts, investigators had only physical evidence and the crime scene itself to rely on. One of the earliest challenges in the investigation came from the location of Mark's bike. Police informed Pauline that they could not obtain fingerprints from the bike because it had supposedly been taken to a pawn shop. Later, Pauline learned the bike had never gone to the pawn shop at all. This discrepancy created confusion and frustration for the family and raised questions about whether key evidence had been mishandled or neglected. Pauline believes that early investigative missteps cost the case valuable time and potential leads. The crime scene itself offered few clear answers. There were no shell casings found that could tie a specific weapon to the shooting. There were no footprints, no signs of a struggle beyond Mark's desperate crawl, and no personal belongings left behind by a possible suspect. Mark still had his wallet when police arrived, leading investigators to rule out robbery as a primary motive. His pockets were not emptied, and nothing indicated an attempted theft. This pushed the investigation toward other possible motives that have remained unclear for years. The location along Old Dixie Highway was significant. It was dark, isolated at night, and offered the shooter a fast escape route in either direction. Without residential cameras or nearby businesses operating at that hour, it allowed whoever was responsible to disappear quickly. This is one of the reasons the case stalled early, with investigators struggling to identify suspects or witnesses. Authorities interviewed neighbors, Mark's friends, and individuals who had seen him in the days before the shooting. No one reported unusual interactions or threats. Mark had no known enemies, no ongoing disputes, and no recent incidents that pointed to a conflict that could escalate to violence. His mother, friends, and co-workers described him as a helpful and non-confrontational young man, further complicating theories about motive. Section 2 lays out the circumstances of the night Mark was killed as clearly as the available evidence allows. The gaps, inconsistencies, and unanswered questions from those early hours would go on to shape the difficulty of the investigation that followed. In the immediate aftermath of Mark Stewart's death, the Titusville Police Department began an investigation that would soon become defined by unanswered questions, missing leads, and growing frustration from Mark's family. The early hours of any homicide investigation are critical, and in Mark's case, those hours passed with limited information and few concrete clues. Detectives arrived at the scene after sunrise, responding to the call made by the two men who discovered his body. From the beginning, investigators encountered challenges that would shape the trajectory of the case for years to come. The crime scene, located along Old Dixie Highway, was difficult to process. The area was open but partially obscured by bushes where Mark's body had been found. The ground showed evidence that he had crawled, but there was little else to indicate what happened. Detectives searched for shell casings, footprints, tire marks, or belongings dropped by the suspect, but nothing of evidentiary value was recovered. This absence of physical clues made it difficult to determine whether the shooter was on foot, in a vehicle, or familiar with the area. Without shell casings, investigators could not determine the type of firearm used or link it to other shootings. One of the earliest points of confusion surrounded Mark's bike, which he had been riding home when the attack occurred. According to Pauline, police told her early in the investigation that the bike had gone to a pawn shop and that fingerprints could not be collected from it. Later, she learned that the bike had never been taken to the pawn shop at all. This inconsistency left her questioning whether the bicycle had been improperly handled, misplaced, or simply overlooked. For families of homicide victims, accuracy and transparency from investigators are essential, and this miscommunication significantly undermined Pauline's trust in the process. Detectives canvassed the neighborhood, interviewing residents who lived near the scene. However, the shooting happened between midnight and sunrise, a time when almost everyone was sleeping. No neighbors reported hearing gunshots, voices, or disturbances. The highway, though lightly traveled at night, had no surveillance systems in place. Businesses in the area were closed, and by 2006, residential security cameras were far less common than they are today. The lack of witnesses or video footage meant investigators had almost nothing to reconstruct the timeline of Mark's final moments. Mark's family and friends were questioned to determine whether he had conflicts or enemies who might want to hurt him. Interviews revealed nothing indicating such threats. Mark was described as helpful, friendly, and introverted. His hobbies, music, video games, computers, did not connect him to criminal activity or high-risk environments. Investigators examined his workplace history, his friendships, and his recent breakup, but no one surfaced as a viable suspect. The absence of motive continued to hinder the investigation. For the first several years, Pauline believed detectives were actively working the case. She made regular contact with the department and provided any information she thought might help. But as time passed without updates, her calls became less frequent, and the feedback she received grew vague. In 2024, she learned something that devastated her. Detectives had stopped working on the case without informing her. Pauline described the feeling as a betrayal, believing the case had been forgotten rather than solved. Another troubling detail emerged when someone reportedly made a tip or report related to Mark's case. According to Pauline, investigators did not follow up on it. The lack of action on that lead added to her concerns that the investigation was losing momentum, or perhaps had already lost it. Cold cases are often hindered by the passage of time, but in Mark's situation, Pauline believes preventable deficiencies played a significant role in the stagnation. Missing evidence, poor communication, and unclaimed leads left her feeling as though her son's case had been pushed aside. She has voiced her concerns publicly, hoping renewed attention might pressure investigators to revisit the case with fresh urgency. For Pauline Stewart, the mother of Mark Stewart, the hardest part of her son's unsolved murder is not only the loss itself, but the silence that followed. The night investigators knocked on her door, she refused to believe the news until they produced Mark's wallet. Even then, the reality felt distant, as if the world had shifted into something unrecognizable. In the nearly 2 decades since Mark's death, grief has remained a constant presence in her life, shaping her routines, her beliefs, and the fight she continues to wage for justice. Pauline describes Mark as someone with a good heart, a young man who battled through personal challenges but was genuinely trying to reshape his life. He had recently quit drinking, earned his seaman's license, and was preparing to pursue a career in graphic design. His growing sense of purpose made his sudden death even harder to accept. The idea that someone could take his life while he was simply riding his bike home after a quiet night with a friend remains unbearable. The years that followed have been marked by an emotional journey that swings between hope and anger. Pauline believed for 17 years that detectives were working diligently on the case. She trusted the process. She waited for updates. She cooperated with every request. But in 2024, when she learned the case had been set aside without anyone informing her, the pain shifted into something sharper. Pauline expressed feeling abandoned not only by the justice system, but by the very people she had depended on to find the truth. The lack of transparency left her questioning how many opportunities were missed, how many potential leads were never followed, because no one informed her that the investigation had effectively gone dormant. Her grief has not been quiet. Every July, she travels from Hamburg, Pennsylvania, back to Florida, revisiting the place where she lost her son. She puts up flyers in the community, hoping someone remembers something or feels compelled to speak. But even these small acts of determination have been met with discouraging signs. Recently, someone has been tearing down her flyers. To a grieving mother, even that simple act feels like a message, one that says the case doesn't matter anymore, or that someone wants it forgotten. Despite this, Pauline refuses to let Mark's story fade. She remains active on social media, posting updates, sharing memories, and voicing her frustrations openly. Her Facebook page has become both an outlet for her grief and a rallying point for those who support her pursuit of justice. She has also talked about creating a GoFundMe campaign to raise a larger reward for information, believing that money might prompt someone to finally come forward. One of the most painful realities for Pauline is the idea that Mark's killer could still be out there, living freely, potentially harming others. She often speaks about the anger this brings her, the idea that her son's life was taken, yet the person responsible may have faced no consequences at all. It has affected the way she raised her daughter, altering how she views safety, trust, and the world at large. Pauline's grief is a reflection of a deeper truth experienced by many families in cold cases. The emotional wounds do not fade with time. Instead, they evolve, forming layers of sorrow, frustration, and resilience. Every unanswered question, every year without progress adds weight to the burden she carries. Yet through all of it, she still clings to the memories of Mark, his intelligence, his sense of humor, the music he loved, the dreams he was reaching for. She keeps his high school photographs close and some of his ashes beside her bed. These reminders are both painful and comforting, symbols of a son whose life was cut short but whose presence still lingers in every corner of her world. Pauline often says that finding the answer is the most meaningful thing to her. Not closure, because there is no closing the wound of losing a child, but truth. Truth that brings dignity to Mark's memory and accountability to the person who took him away. As the years passed without an arrest, the investigation into Mark Stewart's murder shifted from urgent to uncertain, eventually falling into the realm of cold cases. What began as a call for justice slowly transformed into a landscape filled with unanswered questions, procedural gaps, and decisions that continue to trouble Mark's family. When Mark was found shot near Old Dixie Highway, his body hidden among the bushes, investigators faced a narrow window of time. He had crawled in the darkness after being shot, attempting to reach safety. The neighbors did not see him until morning. Every hour mattered, and Pauline assumed the case would be handled with the rigor a homicide demands. For nearly 2 decades, she believed that to be true. But in 2024, she discovered the truth. Detectives had quietly stopped working on the case, and no one had informed her. The news hit like a second tragedy. Pauline had trusted them. She had held on to the hope that behind the scenes, officers were examining evidence, following leads, and searching for the person who killed her son. Instead, she learned the investigation had been swept under the rug, as she puts it, with no explanation. One of the major points of frustration for Pauline revolves around the handling of Mark's bicycle. Detectives initially told her that no prints were collected because the bike was supposedly at a pawn shop. Pauline later found out it had never been taken to that pawn shop at all. To her, this wasn't just a missed step. It was a violation of basic investigative protocol. A bike is personal. A bike carries fingerprints, DNA, and potential clues. Knowing that simple details like this were mishandled or ignored left her wondering what else had been lost. Another concern arose when someone attempted to provide information about the case. Pauline says a report was made, yet detectives never followed up. In cold cases, tips are the lifeline. Each one has the potential to open old doors and reveal new connections. When law enforcement fails to follow through, families are left with the painful suspicion that justice slipped through the cracks long ago. In a community like Titusville, where news travels and memories linger, cold cases rely heavily on the public. Mark was well-liked and had no known enemies. He had battled personal struggles, but he was not involved in dangerous conflicts or criminal activities that might explain why someone targeted him. His death remains a mystery that stands alone, detached from motive, lacking context, and made all the more haunting because of it. Over the years, the case file grew colder, but Pauline continued to seek updates, pressing detectives and departments for answers. For a long time, she held on to patience, believing officers were doing their best. But when communication stopped and contacts became distant, her trust eroded. By 2024, she felt she had been misled, abandoned, and kept in the dark about the true status of the investigation. Today, the unanswered questions continue to overshadow the case. Who shot Mark? Was it a random act? Was he followed? Did someone see him that night? Did someone say something but never come forward? Did the missed evidence hold the key all along? Cold cases often stall due to time, turnover, or limited resources. But for families, time is not an excuse. Every day without an answer is another day spent in the shadow of grief. Another night imagining alternate realities where their loved one is still alive. Pauline's frustration reflects the experience of countless families navigating systems that move slower than grief can tolerate. And then there is the most painful question of all. Is the person who killed Mark still out there? Pauline believes they are. She fears they could kill again. It angers her to know someone who caused so much pain might be living freely, while her son's memory is frozen in time. As the case stands today, with no suspects and no arrests, the Stewart family's search for justice continues in a vacuum of uncertainty. Their determination, however, remains unbroken. Pauline is still fighting, still pushing, still demanding answers, even when the system has grown silent. Nearly 2 decades have passed since Mark Stewart was found dying in the shadows off Old Dixie Highway. Yet his mother, Pauline, has refused to let his memory fade into the quiet corners where unsolved cases go to be forgotten. For her, the fight for justice is not a choice. It is a responsibility, a promise, and the last act of love she can offer her son. What the system failed to do, she continues to do herself. After Mark's murder in 2006, Pauline carried a belief that detectives were working tirelessly behind closed doors. She trusted the process. She trusted the badges. She trusted the idea that justice might move slowly but surely. For 17 years, she held on to that faith. Then in 2024, she learned the truth. The case had gone dormant without her knowledge. The officers who once reassured her had shifted their focus elsewhere. Lead after lead had gone untouched. Evidence that could have mattered was dismissed. And the worst part was that no one bothered to tell her. But Pauline did not collapse under that discovery. She tightened her resolve. Her mission became louder, more public. She made herself a permanent presence in the search for accountability. Every July at the end of the month, she returns to Florida, retracing the steps of the town where she last saw her son alive. She drives the same roads. She passes the same places he once rode his bike. And she puts up flyers with Mark's photo. Bright, visible, and impossible to ignore. For her, each flyer is a small candle in a long night. A signal flare to anyone who might know something and hasn't spoken up. But even that effort has been met with resistance. Some of the flyers have been torn down, an act that feels like a personal betrayal. Whether it is thoughtlessness or something more deliberate, it sends a chilling message. Someone wants the case forgotten. Pauline refuses to let that happen. In Hamburg, Pennsylvania, where she lives now, reminders of Mark anchor her daily life. His high school photos remain untouched, preserving the boy she raised. She keeps a portion of his ashes beside her bed, a quiet companion through sleepless nights and early mornings filled with memories. For Pauline, these items are not relics, they are anchors. They are proof of his existence, proof of his laughter, proof of the future he should have had. Her grief has also become an engine for change. She's preparing to launch a GoFundMe campaign to raise the reward money in hopes of drawing out information. Years ago, Mark's friends had helped raise the reward to $7,000 through a raffle. It was a generous gesture, but not enough to crack the case. Pauline believes that a higher amount, something big enough to make someone reconsider staying silent, could bring new leads. She also uses social media to keep the case alive. When someone tears down the flyers she posts, she calls attention to it online. When detectives fail to update her, she speaks about it publicly. Silence may have stalled the investigation, but she refuses to be silent in return. Her voice is her weapon in a battle she's been fighting alone for far too long. The emotional cost of this fight is immeasurable. Each trip to Florida carries the weight of the night she lost her son. Each flyer she tapes up is a reminder that no arrest has been made. Each year that passes confirms that Mark's killer continues to live freely. Yet she keeps going, because in her heart, the most important thing left is uncovering the truth about what happened on May 19, 2006. Pauline admits the fight has changed her. She raises her daughter differently now, shaped by the fear that danger can strike without warning. Even in supposedly safe places, the world feels less predictable, less kind, but her determination has not dimmed. If anything, it has sharpened with time. For Pauline, justice is not just about an arrest. It is about restoring dignity to her son. It is about proving that his life mattered. And it is about making sure that whoever killed him never gets the chance to take another life. Nearly 20 years have passed since the night Mark Stewart was discovered brutally attacked on a quiet dirt road off Old Dixie Highway. His case stands suspended between two realities, officially open but effectively frozen. To understand the present state of the investigation, you have to look at what was done, what was ignored, and what remains possible today. When the initial investigation began in 2006, deputies responded to the scene where Mark lay collapsed in the grass. He was breathing barely and suffering from a catastrophic head injury. First responders rushed him toward medical care, but he never regained consciousness. Mark died without speaking a single word about who hurt him or why. Those final silences left investigators with no eyewitness account, no dying statement, nothing to anchor their early steps. Detectives at the time formed their first theory immediately. They believed Mark had been struck by a vehicle. There was no proof, but it became the working assumption. That assumption guided their choices: what evidence mattered, what evidence didn't, and where their attention should go. In cases like this, the first theory often becomes the compass, even if it points the wrong way. Outside the hospital, deputies contacted Mark's mother, but information was scarce. She wasn't told whether a thorough forensic examination had been performed. She wasn't told whether his clothing was collected as evidence. Today, almost 20 years later, those details remain unanswered. One retired firefighter, who sat with Mark at the scene before EMS arrived, described injuries that still haunt him. He recalled marks on Mark's neck, suggesting he may have been choked. He also noted blood dripping from Mark's ear, which can indicate a severe skull fracture. These observations were important, but for reasons unclear, they did not lead investigators to consider an assault as the primary cause. Instead, the vehicle strike theory continued to dominate, overshadowing alternate explanations. For years, the case drifted. Leads went unpursued. The assumption of a hit-and-run hardened into an unchallenged belief. But the medical findings told a different story. The pathologist's report documented a fractured skull and a pattern of blunt force trauma that could not be easily explained by a simple impact with a vehicle. The manner of death was classified as homicide, not accident. Yet even then, no shift in direction followed. When Mark's mother, Pauline, learned in 2024 that the case had gone dormant without her knowledge, it was a breaking point. For nearly 2 decades, she had waited for updates, trusting that investigators were still searching. Instead, she discovered that the trail had been allowed to cool for years. She confronted the sheriff's office, demanding answers. The most she received was reassurance without substance. No new leads, no new suspects, no timeline for review. Today, Mark's case stands in an uncomfortable limbo. It is technically active. Any detective can open the file at any time. But there is no assigned investigator and no active pursuit of new information. Cases like Mark's often sit at the edge of possibility, waiting for a single break. A tip, a confession, a witness who finally decides to speak. These are not luxuries. They are the lifelines of cold cases. Technology offers some hope. Advances in forensic analysis, especially in DNA testing and digital reconstruction, could re-examine any preserved physical evidence. But the first question is whether that evidence even still exists. Mark's mother has never been given a clear answer. The community remains silent, though not necessarily indifferent. People who lived in Palm Bay at the time still remember rumors and uncertainties. Some believe Mark was targeted. Others believe he crossed paths with the wrong person. But rumor cannot be used in court. And without active investigation, rumor never becomes testimony. The truth about what happened on May 19, 2006 does not fade just because time passes. Somewhere, someone knows something. Someone saw something. Someone remembers the wrong sound in the night. Or a person who came home acting different. Or a statement someone should never have said. For Mark's family, especially his mother, the hope for justice has shifted. It is no longer about believing the system will suddenly act on its own. It is about applying pressure, telling his story, staying visible, and refusing to let the case slip into permanent obscurity. Until someone comes forward, Mark's story remains a case waiting for truth. And truth, even after 20 years, still has the power to break silence wide open.